You scroll past a photo, someone your age, at a beach you've never been to, with a body you don't have, holding a drink that costs more than your lunch. You feel it immediately. That small, sharp drop in your chest. You close the app. You open it again. This is not a modern problem. This is not social media's fault. What's happening inside you right now is ancient. It is millions of years old. And once you understand what it actually is, you will never look at envy the same way again. Your brain is a comparison machine. Not because something went wrong, because comparison is the engine that kept your ancestors alive. Here's the thing almost no one tells you. The instinct to measure yourself against others didn't start with Instagram or high school reunions or performance reviews. It started in the dirt, around fires, in small bands of early humans who had exactly one survival strategy: don't fall behind the group. Leon Festinger, a social psychologist at MIT, first formalized this in 1954. He called it social comparison theory. His core finding was this: humans have a drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities, and they do it primarily by measuring themselves against other people, not against abstract ideals, not against their own past, against the person next to them. But Festinger only saw part of the picture. He was describing the behavior. He wasn't explaining why it exists at the cellular level, why your nervous system reacts to social comparison the same way it reacts to physical danger. Think about what it meant to fall behind in a hunter-gatherer group. You weren't just embarrassed, you were at risk. If you couldn't keep up, couldn't pull your weight, couldn't match the hunters or the foragers around you, you could be left behind. And being left behind meant dying, alone, without food, without protection, without fire. Your brain learned something during those hundreds of thousands of years. It learned that social position is survival, that status is not vanity, that knowing exactly where you stand relative to others is not pettiness. It is information, vital, urgent, life-saving information, and so your brain built a system to track it constantly. Researchers at the California Institute of Technology discovered something striking in 2016. They were studying the brains of subjects who were told they had just lost money to another person in a game. What lit up was the ventral striatum, the same region that activates during physical pain and threat response. Losing socially wasn't just annoying. To the brain, it looked like getting hurt. This is why you don't compare yourself to everyone. You probably don't spiral into envy when you see a professional athlete or a billionaire. The comparison feels too distant. It doesn't register as a real threat. But someone your age, in your field, with your background, who just got the promotion you wanted? That person triggers the system. That person is close enough to matter. Psychologists call this the similar other effect. You measure yourself against people who feel like genuine benchmarks: your coworker, your college friend, the person 2 years ahead of you in your industry. These are the people your brain labels as relevant. These are the people the ancient comparison engine was built to track. And here's where it gets stranger. The comparisons are rarely neutral. They tilt in two directions, and your brain uses both of them for completely different reasons. Downward comparisons, measuring yourself against someone doing worse than you, produce a temporary boost, a small surge of relief, of security, of status confirmation. Research by Sulz and Wheeler, published in 2000, showed that downward social comparison is a short-term regulatory strategy. Your brain uses it to self-soothe after a threat. When you feel behind, it automatically scans for evidence that you're still okay, still above someone, still inside the group. Upward comparisons, measuring yourself against someone doing better than you, are more complicated. They can motivate, they can also destroy. The difference depends on one thing: whether you believe the gap is closable. If you look at someone ahead of you and your brain calculates that you could get there, upward comparison becomes fuel. It becomes the engine of ambition, of practice, of improvement. But if your brain decides the gap is fixed, genetic, or simply unfair, the same upward comparison curdles into resentment, into that small, sharp drop in the chest. Aaron Vogel at the University of Southern California ran a study in 2014 that found passive social media browsing, Just scrolling, just watching, produced significant increases in upward social comparison and decreases in self-esteem. Not because people were stupid, not because they were weak, because the feed is architecturally designed to surface the best moments of the people closest to you. It is a highlight reel that your ancient comparison engine reads as a live broadcast. Your ancestors never had to process the peak achievements of 500 acquaintances simultaneously. They lived with 20 or 30 people. The comparisons were limited by reality. Now they are limitless, curated, and delivered on demand. This is why the feeling doesn't stop when you put the phone down. The system doesn't have an off switch. It was never designed to be turned off. In the ancestral environment, a brain that stopped tracking social position was a brain that stopped surviving. But there is something important you need to understand about that system. It was built for a world that no longer exists. The social group your brain thinks you belong to, it does not have 500 members. It never did. The threats it is scanning for, the possibility of being left behind, of losing status, of falling out of the tribe, they are not death sentences anymore. They feel like it. They do not function like it. The discomfort is real. The ancient signal is firing correctly. Here is the counterintuitive truth. The very mechanism that makes comparison feel so painful is evidence that your social wiring is intact, that you are, neurologically, exactly what evolution intended. A creature built to belong. A creature built to track its place in a group. A creature for whom social standing once meant everything because for a very long time it did. Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, in their decade-long research into social networks, found that emotions, behaviors, and even outcomes spread through social networks like viruses. Happiness clusters. So does loneliness. So does ambition. The people around you, the ones you compare yourself to, are not just mirrors, they are contagion. They change what you believe is possible. They shift your sense of normal. This means comparison has always been a calibration tool, a way of reading the environment, of updating your understanding of what humans around you are capable of. The problem is not the calibration. The problem is that your brain cannot always distinguish between what is aspirational and what is threatening. Between someone inspiring you and someone erasing you. You can't stop comparing. That's not a flaw. That's the architecture. But you can learn to ask a different question when the signal fires. Instead of asking what their life says about your worth, ask what their life says about what's possible. Shift the interpretation without denying the instinct. Let the ancient engine run. Just reroute where it takes you. Because the same tool that once measured your place in a tribe of 30 can now be aimed forward. Not outward at a curated feed, not sideways at the person 2 rungs above you, but forward at a version of yourself that hasn't existed yet. Tonight, you will scroll past something that makes your chest drop. The signal will fire. The ancient comparison engine will run its calculation. And for a split second before you close the app or spiral or feel small, you might remember this. You are not broken. You are not shallow. You are running software that once kept your ancestors alive on the open savanna. The only question is whether you'll let it run you or whether you'll learn to run it. The comparison never stops. That's always been the point.